everyone's been through a hell of a week, that's for sure. Even before a week ago, I had to bump up the amount of practice I was doing on a daily basis because my emotions were just driving the car and they were too unpredictable. So I had to add a couple of chants and some extra seated meditation. And then my day felt normal again. So that's the function of practice. But if we don't practice, we don't get the result. And it gets risky to check that. From a Zen point of view, we just say, do it. And don't worry if it's good practice or bad practice. So there's a Zen poem I'd like to recite, which I've said before here in Long Beach. Good and evil have no self-nature. Holy and unholy are empty names. Outside of the door is the land of stillness and light. Spring comes and the grass grows by itself. So I want to repeat that. Good and evil have no self-nature. Holy and unholy are empty names. Outside of the door is the land of stillness and light. Spring comes and the grass grows by itself. So there's no such thing as a bad president. There's also no such particular thing as a good president. But this world is confused. And in their confusion, people's minds are controlled by their attachment to good and bad. So this attachment causes more confusion. So our practice is about becoming unconfused and seeing into good and evil have no self-nature. Now, generally the way we see into this quality is by looking into ourselves. And we may see, if we can see, that we are in a constant state of change. There's a constant ebb and flow. We are not fixed. I am not my body. But if my body gets sick, I say something like, oh, I'm sick. But my true nature never gets sick. Only my body gets sick. And if I look at my body closely, it's constantly changing. And if a doctor looked at it really closely, she would see, oh, parts of your body are rotting and decaying and falling apart. And parts of your body are repairing. And parts of your body are healing. And some parts are growing and some parts are being replaced. So even if we look closely at the physical, it's constantly changing. And if we look closely at the emotional, it's constantly changing. And if we look closely at our thoughts, they're constantly changing. But there's one thing that remains clear and bright. What is it? And even the president has this one thing that is untouched by any thought, any emotion, any physical illness. Even the president-elect has this one clear and bright thing. That doesn't change. So our practice is about welcoming in this experience. If we try to think our way to this insight, it doesn't happen. Understanding is always limited by what it can think. So our true nature, which is unknowable, cannot be seen into with thought, but it is always being experienced. Listening to this talk, your true nature and your conditioned nature are completely interpenetrating, not separate. Moment by moment, there is always a correct situation, a correct relationship, and a correct function. So when big emotions appear, our relationship to those emotions has a function. And the practicing person 100% trust their experience. Moment by moment, it keeps changing. We root ourselves in don't know. But that's not to take away our confusion. It's to transform it into insight. A lot of us might come to this practice with the idea of sin. And sin is a construct or an idea the Buddha never taught. He, of course, taught there were things like greed, anger, ignorance. And in the beginning, he would talk about being free of those from a dualistic view. But the more that he taught, and the longer that he taught ultimate liberation comes from transforming greed, anger, and ignorance. So we cannot transform them until we are completely intimate with them and welcoming them in. So if our mind is making good and evil about ourselves, about this world, or about the people we love, that adds to our confusion. So we have to attain our own mind. We create this mind, so we have to attain it. Once we attain it, we can become free of it, and then we can use this mind. And when I say mind, I'm including heart and intuition, gut, everything. Everything you imagine, everything you experience is yours. It's 100% yours. So we attain it, then we use it for all beings. We use it to help. We use it to serve. A Zen monk once said, your karma is your Dharma. That's kind of coded language. Another way to put that would simply be, your habit energy is your truth. So the very habit energies that we think cause our suffering are the thing that we transform and then use to help other people. And in that process, we see into ourselves deeply. And we know all human beings are like this. We learn all creatures are like this. We are able to see into our substance. And we root ourselves in that clear, bright thing, so that everything that keeps changing, moment by moment, we can be skillful with ourselves and with others. And we don't get hung up on the opposites of good and evil. Of course, we see suffering. We're empathetic. We will suffer. When we practice, we're making our mind a clear mirror. So this mirror reflects. If red comes, it reflects red. If white comes, it reflects white. If somebody is hungry, we give them food. If someone is crying, we also cry. That's the first point. Then our mind, our experience, everything that we remember, is used to be skillful in this world, moment by moment. But we have to be clear first, then we can act with compassion and love. And sometimes that clarity has a quality of equanimity, but also that clarity can have a quality of anger. That clarity can have a quality of sadness. That clarity can have a quality of joy. The entire realm of human emotion is constantly changing, 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 changing. Our practice is being clear. What is the truth? Right here, right now. What is this truth? What is my relationship to it? And then what is my function? We can trust our own experience, even when people have told us not to. Even when people gaslight us, even when people mislead us, even when people intentionally confuse us or unintentionally confuse us. The way we succeed is by always returning to everything coming in our senses and by not being controlled by what we think. Our thinking doesn't go away. We're just not controlled by it. And this is not easy to do. However, the more we do it, the easier it gets. And if you're not sure, there should be a kind of feedback occurring in your experience that reinforces the practicing habit. So we look for that. We look for that feedback from the people around us. We look for that feedback from the sky, from the tall tree, from our pets that we take care of, from the animals that we see in the park. Everything is our teacher. And keeping this great question opens us up to that. So that becomes a life rich with extremes. It becomes a life like the week we've had, a week of extremes. But our capacity to feel anxiety matches our capacity to feel rooted and secure. Our capacity to feel anger matches our capacity to feel compassion. So from a Zen view, we don't push these things away. We work with them, work with them, work with them. In the last few weeks, in my case, I was getting overwhelmed. So I just practiced more, added to my practice. And then that would help me return. Big emotion would appear, I'd cry. Tears of sadness or anger or joy, depending on the day. Then we can see this world for what it really is. And even when people are unclear with us, we can see through that. Thinking only takes us so far. Don't know takes us all the way through. So those are about the points I needed to make today.